Case Closed Chronicles. A 12-year-old girl walking her beagle through the sand dunes of Cape Cod made a discovery that would haunt investigators for nearly half a century. A woman, nude, brutally murdered, her head nearly severed from her body and her hands gone. Removed by her killer to make sure she could never be identified. For 48 years, she had no name. She was known only as the Lady of the Dunes. Generations of detectives worked her case. Thousands of leads went nowhere. The killer appeared to have gotten away with it completely. Then, in 2022, a DNA laboratory in Texas cracked open a case that had been sealed shut since 1974. This is the story of Ruth Marie Terry and the husband who tried to erase her from history. It's July 26, 1974. Race Point Dunes, Provincetown, Massachusetts, the very tip of Cape Cod, at the easternmost point of the state. It's peak summer. Tourists fill the beaches. The town is alive with people. And just 1 mile east of the Race Point Ranger Station, hidden in the dunes, lies the body of a woman who has been dead for several weeks. She is found by a 12-year-old girl whose beagle led her to the scene. What investigators discovered when they arrived was deeply disturbing. The woman had been beaten to death, a catastrophic blow to the head. Her body had been carefully arranged on a beach blanket. 2 sets of footprints and tire tracks led away from the scene, but the loose sand and passage of time had made them useless as evidence. Most chilling of all, her hands had been surgically removed, not torn away, removed, deliberately, by someone who knew that fingerprints could identify her. Whoever did this had planned it carefully. No wallet, no clothing, no identification of any kind. Provincetown Police Chief James Meads took the case personally. He told the New York Times in 1983, "It's my case. I've never let anybody else touch it. When you put your heart and soul in a case, you really want to solve it." But for decades, the Lady of the Dunes had no name to give back. For nearly 5 decades, investigators tried everything. They reviewed thousands of missing persons cases from across the country. They conducted neighborhood canvasses. They created a clay facial reconstruction in 1979, one of the first ever used in a Massachusetts cold case, and distributed it nationally. The body was exhumed in 1980, then again in 2000, then again in 2013, each time hoping that new forensic techniques might yield something the last examination couldn't. Each time, nothing. Leads came and went. At various points, investigators looked at whether the murder was connected to Boston gangster James Whitey Bulger. The removal of the hands was a known signature of organized crime killings. They investigated a convicted killer named Haddon Clark, who confessed to the murder, but his confession was widely believed to be a delusion rooted in mental illness. Then, in 2015, something completely unexpected happened. Horror author Joe Hill, the son of Stephen King, was watching the 1975 film Jaws at home. The film had been shot on Martha's Vineyard in the summer of 1974, just months before the Lady of the Dunes was found, and just 100 miles from Provincetown. In the background of a crowd scene, Hill spotted a woman wearing a blue bandana and jeans, the exact same items found with the Lady of the Dunes. The theory made headlines worldwide. Had the victim appeared on film just weeks before her murder, forever preserved in one of the most famous movies ever made? Investigators noted the lead with interest. Others called it far-fetched. It was never confirmed, but it kept the case alive in the public consciousness, which would turn out to matter more than anyone realized. Ruth Marie Terry was born on September 8, 1936, in Whitwell, Tennessee, a small coal mining town nestled in the mountains of the southeastern United States. Her mother died when Ruth was just a young child. Life was hard from the beginning. In 1957, following a short-lived marriage, Ruth left Whitwell and headed north to Michigan, where she found work at the Fisher Body automotive plant in Livonia. She was determined to build something better for herself. In 1958, she gave birth to a son named Richard. But Ruth was struggling financially and unable to care for him. In a heartbreaking decision, she allowed her workplace superintendent, Richard Hanchett Sr., to adopt her son. In exchange for him paying off her debts, she gave up her child to survive. After that, Ruth drifted, California, Massachusetts, Michigan. She had ties across the country and family who loved her, but rarely heard from her. At some point, she met a man named Guy Rockwell Muldavin, a former disc jockey, aspiring actor and professor more than a decade her senior. They married, and then Ruth Marie Terry disappeared from the lives of everyone who knew her. Her brother James traveled to California to find her. A private investigator told the family that all of Ruth's belongings had been sold and that she had left the state of her own will after becoming involved with a religious cult. Her family believed it. They had no reason not to. In the 2 decades before her identification, Ruth was listed as deceased in family obituaries. Her daughter, who had never known her, theorized that perhaps she was in witness protection and simply couldn't make contact. Nobody knew that she had been lying in the sand dunes of Cape Cod since the summer of 1974. In 2022, the Massachusetts State Police made a decision that would break the case open forever. They sent skeletal remains from the Lady of the Dunes to a private DNA laboratory called Othram, based in the Woodlands, Texas. Othram specialized in extracting usable DNA from remains that had previously been considered too degraded to test. The challenge was immense. The bones had been treated with chemical fixatives like formaldehyde over decades of storage, which had severely damaged the DNA. Multiple previous labs had tried and failed to build a viable profile. But Othram's scientists used a technique called forensic-grade genome sequencing, extracting DNA from multiple different parts of the skeletal remains until they had enough genetic material to work with. They built a DNA profile. FBI investigators took that profile and began a genealogical search. Within weeks, they had a match to a close relative. From there, the family tree revealed a name that investigators cross-referenced with everything they knew about the victim: her age, her physical description, her ties to Massachusetts, California, Michigan, and Tennessee. Every single detail matched. On October 31, 2022, 48 years after a 12-year-old girl and her beagle stumbled across a body in the dunes, FBI Special Agent in charge Joseph Bonavolonta stood at a press conference in Boston and said the words that 3 generations of investigators had worked toward. We can finally say her name, Ruth Marie Terry. The identification of Ruth Marie Terry was only the beginning. On August 28, 2023, investigators officially named her husband, Guy Rockwell Muldavin, as her killer. Muldavin had died on March 14, 2002, 20 years before Ruth was identified, never having faced justice for what he had done. He had removed her hands. He had left her in the dunes. He had told her family she had joined a cult. And then he had lived out the rest of his life while Ruth lay unidentified, less than 100 miles from where he had killed her. The case has since been officially closed. Ruth Marie Terry was a daughter, a sister, an aunt, a wife, a mother who gave up her son to survive, a son named Richard who never stopped wondering about the woman who brought him into the world. In 2022, Richard finally had his answer. His mother had not abandoned him. She had not joined a cult. She had not chosen to disappear. She had been taken from him and from everyone who loved her. For 48 years, she was known only as the Lady of the Dunes. Now we know her name, Ruth Marie Terry. Born September 8, 1936, Whitwell, Tennessee. Finally, after nearly half a century, she has it back. Subscribe to Case Closed Chronicles for a new cold case every week. Next week, 2 women, 2 murders, 16 years apart, and the DNA database that proved it was the same killer both times. That case is coming up next. Like and subscribe.